For the win, it's good! Okushevsky takes flight as SGA plays through the contact, banks it in on the foul.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Uncontested Postgame Show, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm your host of the night, E.D. Silva. Folks, Thunder knew I was hosting tonight. They told themselves pregame, hey, the audio guys got the postgame tonight. Let's just play another shitty game. Another one. And that's exactly what tonight's game was, to be honest. The Thunder lose in Minnesota on the second night of a back-to-back. Really tough offensive performance. They lose 102 to 132 on a night where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fell all the way back to earth after just tearing up the league since the All-Star game. He was he had scored more points than anyone else from the All-Star break until yesterday. And then tonight, he scores 8 points, picks up three rebounds and 8 assists after scoring all those points and looking just exceptional. So I want to break down why this happened to Shai tonight and what Minnesota did to cause such an outcome. So, to get started, here was our starting lineup for the night. It was SGA, of course. Trey Mann was announced that he didn't tear anything. He twisted his ankle, another lost ankle on this Thunder roster. So it was SGA, Lindy Waters, Aaron Wiggins, Darius Bazley, and Isaiah Roby. That was the starting lineup. So, beginning with that, Malik Beasley came into tonight and was immediately on fire. Malik Beasley actually broke the Timberwolves franchise record for threes made in a single game with 11 threes. So Beasley finished with 33 points. He only made those threes tonight. People just can't stop hitting an extremely high percentage of threes against OKC. A couple nights earlier this week, Bogdanovich from Utah hit 10 threes on OKC as well. So that's been tough. It's definitely brought what was a great defense with the Thunder down right back to the middle of the pack, where I kind of assumed they would be at a certain point. What was funny about this game is that a lot of the other stats were really, really close. Like Minnesota was not beating OKC considerably in many stats. Rebounding was close. It was 48 to 42 in Minnesota's favor. Assists, there was some discrepancy there. It was 34 assists to Minnesota to 26. Beyond that, turnovers, OKC had one more turnover, points in the paint identical, fast break points identical. But Minnesota's biggest lead of the night was 34, and OKC's was 6. They could never just get past the sheer shot-making talent that Minnesota brought to the court tonight. And that ultimately it's an easy answer, but it's the only answer to a game that ends like this. Defense definitely struggled. Not many shot makers on the floor, of course. You have some guys out on the floor that in theory are supposed to be able to make shots. You know, you have SGA, who's been driving unlike anyone else in the league, has been driving to the rim as of late, making an extremely high percentage of his looks. The deal with SGA tonight, though, was anytime he would touch the ball, Minnesota knew there was no one else that was out on the floor that could also handle the ball, that could also score. So Shai would touch the ball, and immediately at least 3 guys would swarm him, facing triple teams at least, anytime he would enter the paint. So the only shots Shai was getting were he could drive and get fouled. He could drive and turn the ball over, which he did 4 times tonight, or he could take like a step back 3. I say he had 4 turnovers. Shai was making, I think, the right reads, the right passes all night. But whenever you have Lindy Waters, Aaron Wiggins, who I'll get to in just a bit. Aaron Wiggins actually had a great night. He was one of the lone bright spots, I think, on this Thunder roster tonight. Darius Bazley and Isaiah Roby. It's tough. You're not a lot of shot making. This team has had a ton of injuries. They announced 3 surgeries yesterday, the day before. So the injuries have piled up, and ultimately it's going to help this team's record be worse and worse as this season goes on and kind of dwindles out. I'm actually keeping an eye on the Rockets-Lakers game right now because it is in overtime, and the Rockets are up 10 points on the Lakers. So that would be pretty big. That would tie Houston and Orlando would be tied in the win column for the first and second worst record. So Houston, assuming they win this game, there's about 2.5 minutes left. Houston would be 17-49, and Orlando would be 17-50. I was keeping an eye on a Detroit game. They were up on Chicago in the 4th, and they ended up losing that one. So OKC is still 2 games up in the win column on Detroit. So just something to keep an eye on. Let's keep going through this game. One thing that I wanted to point out on Minnesota's side, I really thought Karl Anthony Towns would have like a massive night because OKC didn't have much size down low. It was basically the tandem of Bazley and Roby. Olivier Sarr was subbed in and just picked up a bunch of fouls immediately. That was all the size OKC had, and I really thought Karl Anthony Towns would just kind of shove those guys into the post and get a ton of points, but Cat only finished with 13, 11, and 4. Minnesota's quote-unquote big 3 really didn't put up an insane stat lines themselves tonight. It was just the combination of all the shot making from Beasley. A couple other guys on Minnesota really jumped off the page. Taurean Prince just decided to hit 5 threes, and Naz Reid also hit, I believe, 5 threes. 2 threes, but he was 5 of 8 from the field. As a team, Minnesota was 42% from 3. They hit 22 of them. OKC hit 14 on 33%. So simple game to figure out, honestly. Look at the box score. Most of the stats are similar aside from the shot making. You hear the thing from inside the NBA all the time. It's a make or miss league. That is kind of exactly how this game went tonight, unfortunately. Let's go through the OKC box score, though, and talk about some of the highlights, because I think there were some highlights despite the final result. So Aaron Wiggins had one of those games where someone has to take the shots that are open, and there were a lot of open shots if 3 or 4 guys are looking at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all night. Aaron Wiggins finished with, I believe, a career high in points, 25, 9, and 5 on 9 of 19 shooting for Aaron Wiggins. So, guy that entered the season as a OKC blue guy, a fringe roster guy, he's showing in some of these games, like he showed in the middle of the season, that if you increase his volume, he can still produce. And, there's much left to see with Wiggins. He's going to have to come in next season and do the same thing to prove he's a real NBA player that can last on this roster. But he was very useful tonight offensively. He was one of the only guys that Shai could pass it to that would score. And so 25, 9, and 5 for Wiggins. He was, 5 of 8 from 3, 9 of 19 from the field in general. So shout out to Aaron Wiggins. Went through HGA's line already, 8, 3, and 8. Shot 2 of 15 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3. Had 4 turnovers. Really tough. I said Wiggins was one of the guys, and I'm going to just have some highlights on in case you guys are watching so you can watch it at the same time. I said Shai only had a couple guys he could throw the ball to that could make a shot tonight. One of the guys who could not was Lindy Waters. Lindy Waters has honestly played pretty well as of late. Has been able to make some shots. Tonight he finished 2 of 10 from 3 though, and most of those were wide open looks. It just couldn't make any shots. If he had made a few more, it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game, obviously, but it would have made this a bit more competitive at least. Another guy that, without Trey Mann, I believe Mark Daignault talked before the game about how Pokey was going to get a larger role, especially when playmaking comes in mind this game. So I was kind of hoping we would get a Poku game. I was hoping we would see something along the lines of what we saw from him last season, where he was, point Poku. We haven't really seen much point Poku. He's been much more reined in this season. albeit as of late, he's been better than he's ever been before. Tonight, we unfortunately didn't really get a good Poku game at all. He only had 16. He played 16 minutes. Got in foul trouble pretty quick, and I think that may have played a role in the amount of 9 minutes, and was never really in rhythm. Bobbled a lot of passes that came his way. A lot of them did not result in turnovers. He only had one turnover, but he would go and try and catch a pass, and maybe the pass was a little high from Baisley or Roby from the elbow, and the ball would just kind of slip right between his fingers, and he'd have to go chase it down back at half court. I think that happened 3 or 4 times tonight. He didn't play like he was very focused, ultimately, is what I think. So his final line, 11 points, 4 rebounds, and an assist, 3 personal fouls. He never picked up any more after he was in early foul trouble, but not the night from Poku that a fan might want if all the other ball handlers outside of Shea were out. I need to own up to something. Teo Maladone, who I've slandered relentlessly for most of the season on our group pods whenever we talk about guys that are going to be around long term. I don't think I'm necessarily changing my tone on that front. I'm not going to say because of this game, oh, Teo's going to be around long term now. I don't think that's the case, but Teo has shown a different level of aggressiveness on his drives as of late. He did that tonight. He finished with 12 points, 7 rebounds, no assists, unfortunately, but he wasn't passive. Like he was actually trying to make offensive plays, and that was huge. Just to see that aggressive, he would drive down the middle of the lane, he would take contact and finish through the contact. He tried to take some fast, like above the break threes. They didn't work out. I think he just made 2 threes tonight. He was 2 of 5, so not terrible. And I'm glad he's taking them. I hope he keeps taking those shots, because the Teo that we were seeing for much of this season was just not an NBA player. He was a guy that was going to be out of the league probably next season unless he did something. And at least he was doing something tonight. So I'll definitely give him that. For those of you watching, if you guys have any questions about this game, feel free to drop them in the comments here, and I'll go over those. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the highlights we've been playing during the shows. I've been trying to incorporate the NBA YouTube highlights, kind of as we're talking about the post game. So hopefully, you guys enjoy that. Let's check up on the Lakers game. Yes, the Rockets did close out that game. So the Rockets win 139-130 over the Lakers tonight. Putting the Rockets, let's see. So the Rockets dropped to the 2 spot in the lottery rankings because they have 1 less loss than Orlando. So the Rockets 17-49 now. Tonight could have ended up a lot better in the tank standings. Had Detroit won, I think OKC would have only been 1 game up at that point, but that's the way it goes. Alexander, how did Poku do? Poku got in early foul trouble tonight. Picked up 3 fouls in 9 minutes. Fumbled a bunch of passes and never really got in rhythm. I liked the shots Poku was taking. He was taking open threes. I think he was trying to make the right passes, but it was just kind of one of your traditional, not super focused Alexei Pokusevsky games. So that was tough. Let me make sure there's nothing else major to go through on the box score tonight. That was mainly it. I wanted to give props to Minnesota. Actually, Minnesota fighting for the 6th seed in the West after missing the playoffs so many years in a row. Outside of that one Jimmy Butler season, they have really broken out, and they've proven they can be like a really solid team offensively, especially. I know early this season they were really good, a really good defensive team, and not super consistent offensively. That has flipped in the latter half of this season. They've been a really explosive offensive team, and it makes sense if you look at the guys on paper on their roster, and they've been so defensively. So I'm curious to see how they do in the play-in. I'd be a little sad, honestly, if they ended up playing like the Lakers in the play-in and they lost to the Lakers. I think Minnesota deserves it a bit more than LA at this point. I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. I think Minnesota historically, if they were to play a team like the Thunder, I think they would play down to their competition and make it competitive the whole way. and they just came in and they handled their business. These are the games they're supposed to win if they want to be a good team. These are the games that in previous years they would lose, and just they would be the Sacramento Kings-esque. The Kings playing the Nuggets right now, and I fully expect them to lose that one. Before we head out, I want to talk briefly about the tank standings one more time. The Magic did close out a win against the New Orleans Pelicans tonight, which I don't think it's going to affect OKC's standing that much. But it did tie them with Houston in the tank standings. So that one will be interesting. Really, it's Detroit that I'm looking at heavily as like the best case scenario in changing positions with OKC. Detroit is sitting at 18-48 on the season. OKC is sitting at 20-46, so a 2-game difference there. Detroit's been on a tear recently. Cade Cunningham has looked like exceptional, and I think there's a chance that we could at least tie them for the third. Joseph, overall opinion on Waters? I think overall it's a really good story. He played in Norman, not too far from here. Has worked his butt off to get to where he is physically. A lot of people didn't think he'd be an NBA player at all. I think he has the right body type to play in the NBA. Honestly, I don't know if he has the overall skill level to play in the NBA long term. I hope he keeps getting a shot. Like, I wouldn't be totally upset if he was on the Thunder roster as a 2-way next season or something like that. But I think the most likely outcome is that he does not return and he kind of bounces around the league for a minute and then ultimately flames out. I think it's just a skill thing. He's 24, and I don't know how much more room a guy like Lindy Waters has to grow in the NBA. He is I talked with Jacob on our Sunday show. He is, in theory, the guy the Thunder, the mold of player that the Thunder wants on this team long term, as far as being a big wing that can make the right passes, that is athletic, that can play a bit of defense, that can make shots. I just don't think Lindy is at the skill level you necessarily want from that. You want your Jabari Smiths, you want your Chet Holmgrens to be in those roles where you can get them the ball and they can make the right play and be super, super athletic and skilled, catching passes from SGA and Giddey all game. So, yeah, it's tough. I like Lindy Waters. He played for those not from Oklahoma, he played on the same high school team as Trae Young. That team somehow did not win the state championship that year, but really fun story. He's worked his butt off. He's a Native American, which obviously means a lot for people that live in Oklahoma, him being able to play on this team. I think he might be the first Native American to play on the Thunder, so that's huge. Yeah, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask them. We can wrap this up pretty soon for sure. Let's see. I always think it's fun to run through after a full slate of tanking teams. I always think it's fun to run through Tankathon a couple times just to see. Great. Maybe I should just do it once. Sacramento got the first pick and OKC got the 6th pick that time. So maybe I just don't touch Tankathon anymore. Seems like bad news. A couple other highlights throughout the NBA tonight before we head out. I know this was not the most exciting game for OKC fans, so I can at least give you a kind of a brief look around the league. Jason Tatum, another explosive performance from him. Boston 17-3 in their last 20 games. Jason Tatum with 44 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists tonight against the Hornets. Cade Cunningham scored 22, 4, and 6 in a loss against the Bulls. Super close game down to the end. Devin Booker came back for the Suns and scored 23, 8, and 9. They handled the Heat pretty easily, 111-90. And then my favorite outcome of them all, the Rockets beat the Lakers 139-130. I think that one was in Houston, but I mean, regardless, can't have that outcome. Russ actually statistically did not have a bad game. Russ finished 11 of 21, 30 points, but LeBron was 9 of 26. And as we all know, the Lakers roster is just suspicious at this point for sure. So I don't really think they're going to make the playoffs. If they do, it'll just be the play-in, and then they'll lose to one of those teams like the Clippers that I think are just more talented and well put together. But cool. We can go ahead and wrap this up for the night. Thank you guys for hanging out with me in the live chat or listening afterwards on whatever podcast platform that you use. The Thunder actually have some time off, so hopefully they can get healthy and get back to playing more competitively, at least, even if they are still racking up the losses. So the next game will be Sunday the 13th against the Memphis Grizzlies. As you all know, since it's a Sunday game, we're just going to cover that one on our Sunday group show. So feel free to come in and hang out with us, ask questions about the game or the previous week in Thunder basketball. Awesome. So until next time, thanks again for listening, and Thunder up.